What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Hollywood Already Did It presents Loki Through the Years, a Marvel Pair Up series where we take every episode of Loki as it comes out and pair it up with a time travel movie to discuss the themes and how the genre has progressed, as well as how the show is taking from other aspects of the genre. As always, I am your host, Blake Schultz, and with me today is Jamie Jirach.
Hello.
And Terrence Tatum.
Hello, everyone.
And we are talking about the penultimate episode of Loki, the second to last, what I think is the best one of the series, as well as the movie Looper from 2012, a fun romp through time. I think that's the only way to describe that movie.
I don't know if fun's the right.
It's a joyous, nothing bad happens to anyone. A bright, optimistic outlook of the future, just like this episode, which was just filled with good times and no sad moments at all. What did you guys think of the episode, Jamie?
Oh, so good. I mean, all the Lokis. Are you kidding me? Richard E. Grant as classic Loki. Quick brag, I'm interviewing him tomorrow and I can't freaking wait. I'm just such a fan of his, and seeing him, like, he nailed it. And all the like Loki brawl is the hardest I've laughed in a very long time. My only complaint is this episode had some CGI that was rough for me. There, like, just certain CGI stuff I can't stand. And I love alligator Loki, but it's like, he's not real though. I wish he was a puppet, you know, like Baby Yoda. But ultimately, I was a big fan. A lot of good emotional moments too that I really loved.
Yeah, no, it is not my favorite. I think the last episode was my favorite, but this is a steady dose of what I like to see. I think some of my favorite parts, obviously the Loki brawl. I mean, obviously you get a room of a bunch of Lokis in the room. Of course, they're going to turn on each other. That's just the way that's going to go. So it played just like I thought it would. I was pausing a lot because there were literally Easter eggs getting thrown at my face every 5 seconds. I was like, wait, that Thanos copter is here? What is happening right now? I was really having a ball with that. But I think my favorite part of the entire episode is seeing Loki and Sylvie be super awkward teenage kids with him putting a blanket on himself, and then like, you want some of this? And neither of them like, I don't know how to do this because I've never really been around. I was like, oh, this is adorable. This is super cute, and that was the sweet spot of the whole episode for me. I do get it. The cloud monster, just overall, Althea, it looked weird, but I think this is the way that character is designed. And just after a while, you're like, oh, this is a lot of CG that just looks. I don't know if the budget for television is as strong as this needs to be per episode for you to get what that's supposed to actually look like.
I don't know that the budgets are going to get much higher than the Disney Plus shows for TV.
Correct. I think those Lord of the Rings ones are pretty high per episode.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, this I think might have been my favorite. It was the most Rick and Morty-esque episode. I know that writer's been running around, and this whole time I've been waiting for a very Rick and Morty-y episode, and this was definitely that, with a lot of bits, a lot of different Lokis running around. We've talked about the battle. Easter eggs galore, not just from the Marvel Universe, some that we'll talk to more. There's a Polybius arcade cabinet in this episode. It made my heart sing. What a fun treat to have. Ecto coolers. We see all these different variations. I just wish we had seen even more. It was definitely one of those episodes that kept me being like, well, I want to see like weirder and weirder Lokis. Like there's this alligator one, so there has to be more. Which I think is the beauty of what the MCU does, is every now and then they just leave me being like, well, we could do a whole show of Kid Loki killing Thor. I could watch boastful Loki with this hammer for a day. I want to see the entire electoral process of deciding which Loki should be ruling them. There's so much here. We talked about the Thanos copter. There's the Yellow Jacket as a giant helmet. We have helicarriers. We have a very real USS carrier ship that did mysteriously vanish in our own history show up there. That was great. I know there's coordinates to a certain island that in the real world is claimed to have Indiana Jones type mystery and artifacts there. So it's interesting to see them pulled not just from the MCU. The Polybius cart is probably my favorite one. Do you guys know that story at all of what that is?
I do not.
Nope. Tell us.
Great. So in the 1980s, there was I guess, urban legend that there was an arcade game called Polybius that had been placed in very specific arcade rooms, 7-Elevens, convenience stores throughout the country. And that this game was giving people seizures, epilepsies, all types of weird reactions. People would play it and go mad or get depressed. And they claimed that at all of these arcade cabinet stations, men in black would show up, take data from it, figure out who had the highest score in the game, and leave. And then one day showed up, took the arcade cabinets, and left. And the urban legend is that this is all part of some government conspiracy to track who would be good fighter pilots, good soldiers. A lot of people think it's this is how we're going to fight the aliens. For people who have read Ready Player One and Ready Player Two, they talk about that game in it and these men in black showing up being kind of the catalyst of who's being chosen to go fight against this invasion that's coming. It has showed up at episodes of The Goldbergs and other pieces of pop culture. They made it for real on the PC just to kind of joke around, I think in the 2000s, as well as on the PlayStation 4 in 2017. But it's a staple of like gaming urban legend and what is it? And seeing it back there was a very fun, just like, oh, it's here. It's someone really had it. The Men in Black were coming and the TVA said no.
That's really cool. I love that.
That's those are the things in the episode that I liked the most, because the Thanos copter was amazing and we've been waiting for it forever. Yes. But Thor Frog was great. Apparently that's actually Chris Hemsworth screaming. But no, everything else in the episode, the action was so on point. The CGI monster was a little CGI monstery, but these emotional beats of them getting closer and closer romantically and having the very stereotypical John Hughesian moment of like, well, it was just a moment. It was a nice moment, but it was just a moment. Right. And that's all it was. You've got Owen Wilson showing up in this almost Ghostbusters-esque car, coming around to everything. His whole agency now to turn down the TVA and destroy them from the inside is fantastic. I love having this company person now who doesn't care who she's serving. She just has to keep serving it. We're getting deeper and deeper, and it's just got to be Kang, right? It has to be Chronopolis that we saw.
Yeah,
that was the castle.
That has to be where we're going.
It would be surprising if not. I mean, they fooled us before, but I mean, like, right. But unlike WandaVision, where it's like we expected a reveal, this is actually like promising a reveal. Like,
yeah, like this is literally pointing to like all roads lead to this, whatever we're going to reveal in this next episode.
And even if it's not Kang, like it's going to be something,
right?
Like, you know, it's. So I'm excited to see what it's going to
be. That's why this episode wasn't as high as the last episode for me, because this episode, as much as they throw at us, as great as it is to see all these Easter eggs, it doesn't really move the actual plot story part very, very far. It's basically in the same spot as it was before at the very beginning of the episode, at the end of the episode. They're still trying to get from one point to another to figure out how to get out of there, and none of that's really changed. And so that's why I'm like, this is a great episode. I just wish, with one episode only being remaining, I wish we've gotten to a couple of those points.
I think this one was a lot more about character development than it was about moving it.
I'm all about that.
Like the one thing we haven't really talked about is Richard E. Grant's classic Loki, and what is now one of the top 10 MCU moments of the idea of glorious purpose, which is going to become a bigger piece when we get to Looper and everything else. But it's interesting now. I'm going to use Doctor Who again. In Day of the Doctor, we have all of these different doctors at different points in their lives. One of them has destroyed the world they're from. One of them has spent their entire lifetime regretting it, and the other one has spent their time forgetting it. And we see how these characters change based on that trajectory. And having Richard E. Grant as this older Loki who was in isolation, who wanted to know if his brother missed him, and figuring out what his glorious purpose was, I think showed us what the trajectory of all of these Lokis it's their age, their trajectory is.
Right.
So I think now we're kind of seeing like this presidential Loki's glorious purpose he thinks is ruling this mystery land. Child Loki thought it was killing Thor. We know that our Loki believed it was ruling whatever he could rule, showing the illusion of freedom. And Sylvie's is just simply figuring out why she was erased. And I think this episode and Richard E. Grant specifically served us to be like, this is the end of a Loki arc. They're going to figure out what their purpose is, fulfill it, and die. Mm-hmm. And I think it's almost kind of implying like Tom Hiddleston's story is about to be over. He's going to figure out what he has to do, and it's going to be over.
I mean, we sort of stated that we've been playing with one of those two Lokis. Is either he or Sylvie is gone. It makes more sense for arc-wise that it is Hiddleston that is the one that is gone.
But as we've discussed, we are pretty sure we're getting a season 2. So correct. I don't think he's
But done. I mean, I think they can easily, because she is technically a Loki.
Could be her show,
it could switch to her.
Jamie, you're not thinking fourth dimensionally. We might be done with one Loki. Season 2 could just be child Loki.
Which I'm down for, especially since it all points to the Young Avengers. So like that does make sense.
You got me there. I just am not ready to say goodbye to Tom.
I mean, I think it's time to get ready to say goodbye to anybody introduced in phase 1. I think we're wrapping all of these characters out with the
we're
old.
Saying a hard goodbye to all of phase 1.
In with the new. Speaking
Except
of being
for Chris,
out.
Except for Hemsworth. Hemsworth is sticking around for a while.
I think Thor 4 is going to be his swan song.
I think so too.
But it's a comic book.
We'll see.
They'll all come back anyways.
Give us
Nothing
10 years
matters.
And, RDJ is
Old
from
man
the
Stark.
grave in 10 years. Something.
Put it in my veins. But but no, I thought it was fantastic. I thought we did a lot of very strong work, a lot of very strong motivations. Speaking of strong work and strong motivations, this brings us to Looper, Rian Johnson's feature film from 2012, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Bruce Willis in a movie about time travel and specifically killing yourself, where Joseph Gordon-Levitt is playing a character who is an assassin who... Is that my thing beeping?
I
don't hear it.
I'm getting feedback. Okay. Maybe it's my headphones even. Who knows? Anyways, Looper. It's a 2012 movie where Joseph Gordon-Levitt is an assassin. People get sent back in time. He shoots them in the head. He collects silver. The loop is closed when the future version of himself is sent back with gold, denoting that the loop is closed. However, we find out that one of his friends has kept his, where we learn about the Rainmaker. And when Joseph Gordon-Levitt's future self, who is Bruce Willis, shows up, they get away and they go on a quest to stop the Rainmaker, who is supposedly closing all of the loops early to end the Looper program. And we go from there. A story about finding yourself, trying to change the future. A lot of very normal time travel-y things. If I do this, everything's fine. If I do that, everything's fine. And not unlike Richard E. Grant learning that maybe his purpose is to sacrifice himself so that somebody else can have another chance at redemption. What do we all think of Looper?
I love Looper. This is when I fell in love with Rian Johnson. Like, I know Brick existed and I watched it. And I was like, oh, this is cool, but it's super small and independent. And this one, while it is a big sci-fi thriller, and that's what it is still very intimate and small in scope and scale. Like the concept is large, but the actual payoff and how they do everything is super, super small. And I remember I went to theaters to see this. I loved it. I think it is always interesting when you can play with what you think you should become or what you think you are becoming, and then you are able to see what you became, and you're like, oh hell, none of what I thought I was doing or what I was achieving actually paid off or even mattered, which is sometimes that's the biggest thing. I was like, oh, what I thought I was about, what I thought I was doing has no bearing on what I actually became. That is frightening to know that what I was even something as small as I was learning French, but now I chose to do Mandarin. I'm like, well, hold on, I said I'm doing French. how did I
I'm
get
from
into
the
what happened to my
future,
life?
kid. Go to Tokyo.
Right. It's like something like that affects any small thing that happens in your life affects whatever trajectory you're going. And that's always been fascinating to me. And that's what this movie really, of all other things, that's what this movie hits home to me, is like, you may think you're on one path, and then something, even just like the sentence of just go, you should go to Tokyo instead of, right, it just changes. You're like, oh, now it's a seed in the back of your head that whatever you do as you go along in life could have altered where you were going. That's fascinating to me.
I love Looper. I'm just such a big Rian Johnson fan. It's not quite as like mind blowing as it was seeing it in theaters 10 years ago, which I'll never forget. Can you believe I saw it in theaters and I went to the bathroom the moment that Bruce Willis like Rambos everybody? Like I came back and my friend was like, "Well, you picked the wrong time to go to the bathroom." And every time I watch it now, I'm like, "Oh, I can't believe I didn't see this movie." But I think that movie's so good, and I really like that the first half is very much like this time travel thriller, but the second half is very much like an emotional kind of character study. It's like two movies in one, and I really appreciate that. And the moment when like they're cutting up Paul Dano and like you see the older him is just, that is one of my favorite time travel things in
moments.
It is scary.
Like you just see body parts and his nose like is gone. You're like, oh my god.
And like you're falling apart, but it's like like it doesn't hurt. It's just like shocking. And like his nose is gone, and then all of a sudden like he gets to the door and he's nothing but like a torso. Ooh, that's so good. And yeah, and the kid is really good in this movie. Like a perfect blend of sometimes he's terrifying and sometimes he's adorable, which is really hard line. That was like really good casting. Well, what's that kid doing? Look that up.
I don't know.
I'm gonna Google it while you guys keep talking.
No, I completely agree with everything you said. The movie has some great body horror that you never see. It blends all of these genres together. It stays intimate, but keeps its focus. Watching Joseph Gordon-Levitt do his Bruce Willis impression is great. This is one of the last times that I felt like Bruce Willis cared about when he was on camera. Now it just kind of, he just stands in a room and you get him for 20 minutes and a couple million, and then he goes about his day. I love kind of the ending realization of the path that we're on is what's going to start the thing that we're trying to prevent. So we have to end it entirely. And the only way for me to do that is to close my loop, which is, it gets a little very timey-wimey where you're like, okay, but if he had sent back Bruce Willis, if he had just shot him, the movie wouldn't have needed to happen. But Bruce Willis only escaped because all the loops were getting closed, but the loops getting closed are like part of what you signed up for.
Right. You knew that was happening when you took the job.
But I'm a sucker for any weird time travel stuff. I love them at the cabinet of just, I'm not going to explain time travel to you, kid. We'll be sitting here with matchsticks for hours. Bruce Willis's whole just like angry future, I have a purpose to do. But yeah, the address carving in the arm, the missing body parts, that's the stuff that made the movie stick with you for almost 10 years. It's insane. It almost makes the ending anticlimactic because it just sort of stops. It is a movie where the main character dies and then we just walk away into the wind. But it's almost an inverted Terminator thematically, where that movie is very much about like fate and we can control it and there is no fate and I can do this. And this movie is like sort of, but also like it's just going to keep changing and happening.
Yeah, no matter how you do it, it's going to go down.
Yeah. Which I don't know that they really resolve if he becomes the Rainmaker anyways. I don't remember some like highway scene like T2 where we're like, and in the future, John's still fighting. But I don't think we do that. It's very Deadpool 2. We got to kill this kid so Cable's parents don't, or Cable's family doesn't get killed.
Yeah.
But we don't have Ryan Reynolds. So what are we really doing here? Very similar plot.
The Looper kid went on, he was in Twin Peaks The Return. He was the kid in that. It was like, I think it was Naomi Watts and the like dopey Kyle MacLachlan, like the son from that. So that was fun to learn.
Nice.
Information.
And apparently he's stuck around with Rian Johnson because he's in Knives Out as the trooper, which is which is fun. Like that kid is still hanging out with Rian Johnson all
I
this
think
time.
he's the broom boy in The Last Jedi, isn't he?
He's
not.
Yeah, he's too old for that one.
Well, not if you have time travel in your pocket. You know, Rian Johnson really went back in time and did all of these things. That was the only version of Last Jedi that works, I assure you. But that brings us to why we're choosing this movie for this episode of Loki. And I think the main thing that we're seeing is, one, this character realizing an arc simply by meeting himself. We see Richard E. Grant's story really come full circle when he realizes what Sylvie and our Loki are trying to do. I need some Earth denotions. I need to start saying Earth 616 Loki and Earth 1608 Loki. And
no, you have to keep calling them by whatever, like Kid Loki or Classic Loki or a bombastic Loki. I think it's boastful Loki. Yeah, which
felt like a reach. It's like we don't want people calling him Black Loki, but like that was the conversation. They had to really push boastful.
Sitting there was like black. Ooh,
he was boastful though.
What's another?
I killed Cap. I killed Tony. I took all the Infinity Stones. That guy was high on his own supply.
Like, my mom's calling Richard E. Grant old Loki, so that's what subtitles are for.
But I think it's very interesting that kind of the central idea of this show was like, you're only going to know your purpose when you see yourself and your own potential, and then it'll click with what you have to do. Unfortunately, a lot of us, when we're trying to figure out our career, don't get to sit down with a guidance counselor who's us. It's a person whose job it is to keep the system going and just wants us to sit down in a room behind a desk, as is my understanding of. I know guidance counselors. I'm not shaming anybody. I'm just saying it would be helpful if I was sitting down with myself and he was like, look, you think you want to make games, but they treat them so badly. That industry is going to become rampant with crunch time and overworking and no pay. No.
Yeah, there's no better way to guide your life or get guidance in your life than the older version of yourself to be like, hey, let me tell you.
But I think an interesting thing about Looper is that you're never siding with Bruce Willis.
No,
you never. I personally I'm never like he knows better. He's the older version, but that's not really what's happening here. And I think that's interesting. It's usually you're like, listen to the old person. They know, but in this case, it's like, don't listen to him.
Right. I think the audience, and this is just the way that humans work, are always hopeful. So even if you got the curmudgeon old man saying like this and this are all going to go wrong, you're still like, but at least let's try it. Let's see what happens if we go down that way.
You get into the end of Back to the Future when Doc Brown shows up and is like, well, of course the letter is blank. You can do whatever you want. So it's like, why would we listen to this crotchety old man his only existence in this timeline is to die? He has been sent back in time to be shot in the head. That's it. This isn't some T2 save the future bullshit. He has been sent back in time in a specific location at a specific place so that his younger self can get rich and kill him.
Yeah.
That's it. We could be using this technology to do thousands of other things, but we're just using it to clear out assassins that we have. So I think you're right, Jamie. I think that the real difference is that Looper's older character mainly exists to inform Joseph Gordon-Levitt that maybe what he's doing isn't the best and that it's not too late to change. But I think the tragedy of the movie is that we never get to see that attempt or that change. So we as the audience almost have to accept that he would have become this unfortunate character had he not made this sacrifice play to maybe avoid a serial killer getting created. Which is sort of like going back in time to kill yourself so that you don't kill Bruce Wayne's parents. Which is what Teen Titans Go to the Movies does. And we see that in real time. But it's interesting because then the alternative younger self informs Richard E. Grant of not, because he's also like, you like Richard E. Grant because he's charming, but that old Loki is the one that's like As soon as we decide to do something good for ourselves, the TVA shows up. We're all going to end up here. Nothing matters. We exist to get killed by Thanos. And if we don't do that, we get sent back to the end of time where there's nothing. And through the course of that 40-minute episode, he has this redemption arc and knows to like stand up and make this awesome Asgard illusion to hopefully give all these other Lokis a better shot, or at least our Loki and Sylvie. It is also interesting that there's only one Sylvie so far. We haven't seen any other variants of her.
Yeah, I do wonder if that's going to get brought up, why there's only one female Loki, or one even version of her, because
maybe it's not Kang and it's going to be an evil Sylvie at the end, and that's going to set up Kang, and she's like, I had to get rid of all of them.
I love that. That would be wild. I'd love that. Oh man, did you see that yesterday? Marvel Canada, I think it was a mistake, but they tweeted like, meet the Lokis, and one of the pictures was of Hunter B-15. And I was like, is she secretly Loki? And they screwed that up and spoiled it. I think they were probably just messing up.
Yeah.
My roommate has a theory that the entire TVA is Loki's.
Mm-hmm.
That like it's gonna
everybody.
that
like,
Owen Wilson is one, and everybody, that this is all gonna be some like weird Rick and Morty nonsense.
It's called Loki. You know?
Right. But I think it's interesting that that's where we get, because we don't really see any of the other Lokis have that same turnaround. Like Child Loki runs off to, assemble a team of children to fight evil.
Correct. He has somewhere he has to go.
I don't know where Crocodile Loki is, but I want a whole episode of What If in his universe.
I do too.
Are they all animals?
Right.
And are they all alligators?
And only because it's weird too that like he's talking or saying stuff and classic Loki can understand him, but no one else really can. Or it was weird. I was like, I don't know the dynamics of how.
It's like Chewbacca. He's just been around him long enough.
Correct.
I also need this Frog Thor versus Loki scene that we have shot.
Yeah, a Throg would be great to see in person.
I need that immediately.
Yeah.
At first I thought it was a shrunk down like Ant-Man who was worthy in the jar, and I had to like kind of go back and pay attention. I was like, oh, it's the frog, because we saw the big Yellow Jacket helmet. So part of me was like, is that an Ant-Man in there that can wield Mjolnir? Because that would be awesome.
Yeah.
But this was the kind of nonsense I've been wanting from this show. I want to get things pulled from everywhere, because when we started this journey, we thought every episode was going to be like heist Loki in the 60s and 70s and more of this. Because wasn't the first like image they showed of the show like him in some other time that we still haven't seen yet? Or was that part of him jumping out the
DB Cooper was really early. The DB
Okay,
Cooper
that's
look.
what it was.
Yeah.
And also we saw, I think it's so funny that one of the first things we saw was President Loki. Like we assumed that was just Loki, and then he's there for 2 minutes and then he gets his hand bit off at the end of it. Oh, that was so funny.
Yeah.
They love taking that guy's hand off. Back to some phase 2. Everyone loses an arm in every movie. I'm here for it.
Yeah.
But it's a great show.
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. I'm excited to see whatever the hell we're about to do for this last piece.
Well, we're gonna do Terminator because there's been nowhere else to put it.
That's true.
And I think I'm gonna have to watch Southland Tales just since it's come up every week. I think my goal for this week, because I don't really have to watch Terminator, but but I might watch Southland Tales, finally see what all the hype, the anti-hype is about.
No one likes it but me.
You know what's funny? On Letterboxd, I've never seen a movie so spread out between the 0.5 star and the 5. Like it had an even of every single ranking, and that's really rare in Letterboxd. So like, I have a feeling I'm gonna really like it.
Yeah, no, it's a weird ride.
Well, guys, I think that's the show. Thank you so much for watching and listening. You should, of course, leave us a review on iTunes and let us know what you thought of the episode on the YouTube comments. You can follow the show at Hollywood ADI on Instagram and Twitter. You can follow me at, as always, Blake, Jamie at Jamie Cinematics, and Terrence at Terrence Tatum. We have a lot of other shows on the Hollywood Already Did It channel. There is our main podcast about reboots, remakes, sequels, and adaptations. There's You Can't Do That Anymore, about movies that you can't make or shouldn't make, or we may look differently now through the lens of not the 90s and 80s and thousands, or the aughts, as I like to call them. And of course, I do How Do You Figure about action figure collecting, and Jamie is busy at comicbook.com, often appearing on Phase Zero. And Terrence does all of our trailer reactions and other movie reviews on the Hollywood Already Did It YouTube channel. And we will see everybody next week.
Later.
Bye.